So the Bitcoin miners have found themselves in a very unique position to capitalize on this AI trend because of their unique expertise operating large powered data centers and having these power agreements in place. I really do think Bitcoin is a generational shift in how the economy and money finance is going to work. AI is a generational shift in how people are going to interact with computers and artificial intelligence.
Welcome to the podcast. This is Mariusz Konieczny. Today I'm chatting with Bryce McNally from McNally Money. So Bryce, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, Bitcoin is hitting all-time highs, and I noticed you like to talk about mining stocks, Bitcoin mining, crypto mining stocks, or mining stocks like the real stuff.
Good question. So yeah, I started my YouTube journey about 4 years ago, and it's a stock channel. Basically, we review micro, mid-cap, medium-sized companies all around the world. We have reviewed traditional mining, gold, silver, copper, whatever the case is. However, recently I've gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole here, and over the past few years, we've layered kind of a second podcast, if you will, on top of the McNally Money platform called Power Mining Analysis. So that's where we look exclusively at the Bitcoin mining companies, or crypto miners. And you're right, a lot of activity, a lot of excitement there as we're hitting the new all-time highs right now.
You know, I recently only got interested in Bitcoin because one of the stocks that I own put a Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and that made me kind of want to study it more. But like, what was your journey like into learning about Bitcoin? When did you become a believer?
Sure. Which company do you have?
Leaf Brands.
Gotcha.
Leaf Brands. Have you heard of it?
I have, yeah, and there's a chart, HODL15 on Twitter or X puts out that has the top 100 Bitcoin treasury companies. So we've actually interviewed 21 of those CEOs on our channel. And you're right, we're starting to see a lot of companies in all types of industries now adopt Bitcoin as part of their treasury strategy. So for me, I actually got into Bitcoin quite some time ago, before Bitcoin Cash was released, back in university. It used to be quite big in the online poker scene. So I was an online poker player in university. Bitcoin became quite.
What year was that you?
This would have been back in 2011. I started university. Mm-hmm. So 2007 to 2007 to 2011 is when I was in school. So that was before Bitcoin. We got into doing the online poker thing. Bitcoin started coming around. Became adopted by kind of the online gaming community as an efficient way to move money around and enter tournaments and stuff like that. So after university, one of my roommates who I had lived with at the time owed me some money. He had set me up a wallet using Bitcoin. He had set it all up for me. Blockchain.com, I'll throw a shout out to them. That's been around since day one. So it was a very small amount of money, but I got exposed to it. I started to understand it a little bit. Then life caught up with me, went away from Bitcoin, didn't think about it for 5 or 6 years. That first cycle where it really got popular and started gaining momentum, I opened back up the wallet. The funds had obviously increased, so I started having more interest. And then it was kind of that second time around, or in 2017, when I started taking it a little bit more seriously. So that's when we put together the YouTube platform. It's been around about 4 years.
What price was Bitcoin at that time when you re-entered?
When I got serious about it was right after this last crash. It went down to about $16,000 US, I believe. So I didn't buy in at the bottom there, but that's when I started really taking it seriously and saying, hey, you know what, if FTX and all these exchanges around the world could collapse, the Sam Bankman-Fried, all these situations where there were maybe bad players, Bitcoin showed resilience. It made it through that. Yes, it fell all the way down to 16,000, but look at it today, back at 118. So that was really the proof of concept for me, is this new untested digital currency made it through that really rough period. And now we're seeing this mainstream adoption with the ETFs and the corporate treasury strategy.
Why do you like the miners, Bitcoin miners?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I originally got interested in them after the China mining ban. So last cycle in 2001, the cycle got cut short because China actually put a ban on Bitcoin mining within their country. So a lot of the miners had nowhere to go. They needed cheap power. So they loaded up these sea cans. They brought them over to Canada here and in Alberta, where I live. There's a lot of natural gas. So they actually partnered up with a lot of these flare gas companies, started using natural gas to power their Bitcoin mines. That's what got me interested in the Bitcoin mining was I knew some people that were involved in the power generation, power sales. They said, hey, you should take a look at this as a company for your channel. Now what's kept me interested is Bitcoin mining is very energy intensive. So you probably remember a few years ago, people hated the Bitcoin industry. They said it uses more power than Europe, and it's a huge drain on the economy. But what really that means is security for the network. So what's happened is these Bitcoin miners have got access to these large power agreements. Now artificial intelligence has come around with ChatGPT and Grok and all these new large language models, and they require a lot of power. They also require data centers. So the Bitcoin miners have found themselves in a very unique position to capitalize on this AI trend because of their unique expertise in building data centers, operating large powered data centers, and having these power agreements in place. And that's really quite an exciting, I guess, space to be in. So you've got the Bitcoin macro trend, you've got the AI, HPC macro trend, and then you've got these Bitcoin mining companies kind of right in the middle of it.
Can you explain the business model behind a Bitcoin mining company?
Yeah, so there's a couple of key factors here that are unique to Bitcoin mining. So there's an event in Bitcoin called the halving, which takes place every 4 years. Essentially, the block reward is cut in half. So what that means, if you're not familiar, is the amount of money that you make for your mining operation or your revenue is essentially cut in half every 4 years. So you'll see these cycles, and that's what we're in right now, generally about 18 months after halving, which took place in April of last year. That's when you start to see these big moves in Bitcoin price when supply shock comes in. So for Bitcoin miners, it's a very unique business to try and navigate. That's why they're trying to transition partially into HPC AI, where the revenue is more predictable, it's more stable, better access to capital. Bitcoin's very volatile, as you know. You can see the price move around. So it's very difficult to get money, to get loans, to build your company on a volatile asset. So the Bitcoin miners, they have to deal with that. It's very capital intensive. There's a lot of capex to build these data centers. Some of the top miners have over 300,000, 400,000 mining machines. They're called ASICs. Those are expensive to procure, so obviously there's a lot of capital. So it's a difficult industry for the miners to be in and really presents a lot of challenges. But the business model itself is essentially you get access to power, you buy a bunch of these computers called ASICs or mining machines, you plug them in a data center, and you essentially compete with other computers around the world to solve this Bitcoin algorithm that releases Bitcoin every 10 minutes approximately. And you're rewarded with that, and then you can either keep that Bitcoin, which is known as a HODL strategy or a treasury strategy, or they'll sell the Bitcoin more like a traditional miner would with gold or silver.
So are you saying that because they have to build data centers to power their business, they are diversifying into renting out the computing space from their data centers for AI?
Sure. Yeah, that's right. So co-location, it's known, and that's exactly what they are doing. So some of them are doing hosting with Bitcoin machines, where they'll actually host or store other miners in their facilities, as you make reference to. Some of them are doing that same model with artificial intelligence or HPC. So they use GPUs, those computers are called, as opposed to ASICs. They'll build data centers and operate those. Some of them are vertically integrated. They're buying GPUs right from NVIDIA. They're starting the data centers, the clusters themselves. Some of them are just doing what's called a powered shell or co-location, which is what you referred to. And they'll partner with companies like a Core 42, a CoreWeave, something like that, that will bring their GPUs in, and the Bitcoin miners just host those or house them in their data centers.
It's interesting that you're talking about CoreWeave. Have you heard of a new company called Nebius?
I have, yeah, and these are a lot of the neo clouds. So these are companies that are partnering with the Bitcoin miners. Again, AI is very capital intensive, so this is the space we're watching closely. Yeah.
I made a video on my other YouTube channel, Stock Hunter, about Nebius. So I'm very familiar. Well, you have the hyperscalers, right? The Amazons, the Googles that are building data centers for themselves, and then you have like CoreWeave or Nebius that are building data centers for rent. I made a video about it, but I wasn't too hot about the stock because the the GPUs have a they depreciate. They don't last forever, and Nvidia keeps coming up with new chips. So that was what turned me off about it, is that depreciation, is that their asset base will become obsolete in a few years. But I was wondering what your thoughts on a concern like mine is.
Yeah, we kind of had the same concern, and my partner Anthony Power and I, he's the analyst portion of Power Mining Analysis, or the Bitcoin mining component of the channel. He does all the analysis work and had a very similar concern. The speed of development with these GPUs, the H100, the H200, now the Blackwells, the B200, the B300, they're advancing so quickly, and similar to what we saw with computers at the start. The speed of adoption, the speed of change, the equipment itself becomes obsolete very quickly. So we've heard from a number of CEOs on our channel. It's about a 2-year payback period just to pay for your depreciation on your GPUs. And generally, 2 years out, people are not talking about those same models. So that is a concern we have. That's definitely something I think investors should be aware of. And we really like the powered shell model more, or the co-location model, where you're just responsible for the building and the operations, and you don't have anything to do with the actual GPU purchases. So that seems
Oh,
to be
okay,
working
okay.
well. Yeah. So for
Break it down
example,
like
a
to a
core.
fifth grader. Let me just say how I understand it. You correct me if I'm right or wrong. So you're talking about more like a real estate play, where you have a building, you have access to power, and then somebody else brings in the GPUs. Am I right?
Exactly. And some of them have even talked about a REIT type of strategy. So Core Scientific and CoreWeave are a great example. Core Scientific, they've been a Bitcoin miner. They've been building data centers for years and years. They actually build the data center. They'll take care of the security, the construction, the insurance, all of that kind of stuff, the logistics. And CoreWeave will bring in their GPUs and actually put those in the facility. So that seems to be a nice balance. You're still getting the exposure to the HPC AI. These are generally long-term contracts. In the case of CoreWeave, it's a 12-year contract with 2 5-year extensions. So you're getting long-term locked-in revenue, which is what the miners really need for their operations.
I used to be in commercial real estate before I went full time into stocks, and I noticed several reports about a new asset class in the commercial real estate space, which is exactly what you're talking about. It's kind of like an industrial building, but your tenant houses those GPUs, and it's long-term contracts. It's very recurring. It's very stable. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's great when you're trying to raise money, when you're obviously trying to get cheap access to capital, and the miners have really gravitated towards that strategy.
You mentioned power, and because of this AI data center trend, I'm sure you have heard of the uh, nuclear, modular reactors and all that. What are your thoughts on that space, nuclear, to solve the problem that there's so much energy needed for AI?
Yeah, I think it's a great solution. I think it's a great way to power the future. It's clean, it's safe, regardless of what you've heard about Chernobyl or any of those prior incidents. I think it is one of the safest forms of power generation. The problem right now that the world really is facing, in the States specifically, is bringing on new power capacity takes a long time, sometimes 10, 12, 15 years once you start talking about permitting, the engineering to build these facilities. You mentioned the modular nuclear reactors. I don't know a ton about those, but I would imagine there's still quite a bit of a process if you want to scale that up to a sizable amount of power. So for me, what's interesting right now is this next kind of 18 to 24 months is really the crunch, because consumers want AI. They want to be chat GPTing and making these memes and videos and everything using AI. But the power infrastructure, the power generation is not going to be able to keep pace at this point. So I think you're right with the hyperscalers, for example, the Amazons, the Googles, they may start building their own power plants. They may start investing in nuclear companies, but that's not going to happen overnight. And the demand for this service is here now. So the other nice thing with AI in terms of having access to power, you need what's known as the 5 nines. So you need a fully redundant tier 3 data center. You need uptime of 99.99% to be considered tier 3. It's very difficult to find power that has that kind of redundancy. Specifically, if you talk about renewable power, wind, solar, you're not going to be able to have 99% uptime. So it's very specific power that these AI players need. And right now, there's not enough of it to go around.
Are there any other industries or sectors that you focus on besides what we just talked about?
Yeah, there certainly are. So on the McNally Money channel itself, again, we cover everything from oil and gas, gold, silver, biotech, lithium. The other area I really like learning about, at least, is probably the biotech space. There's a lot being done there with AI as well in terms of mapping the human genome and looking for disease solutions, I guess, or cures. So there's a lot going on there, and then obviously the AI space as well. I know it bridges or dovetails in with the Bitcoin miners, but AI specifically, I think, is something that a lot of people are underestimating right now, and I think it's a lot further along and going to be a lot more impactful in our lives here sooner than people think.
If you want to be in the AI space and invest in it, what other choices people have outside of, NVIDIA?
Sure. So it depends kind of where in the value chain or stack you're looking to invest. So there's a lot of companies almost in any industry that are starting to harness AI within their company, right? They're making these LLMs, large language models. They're doing the training. They're doing the inference. So you start even on Gmail, for example, you start seeing the AI prompts for your email that's writing. You start seeing the chat GPT can help you out with maybe business proposals or recipes or whatever. So there's companies that are already doing this at a ground level, making people's lives easier. You could invest in those. You can invest in the chip makers themselves, so the NVIDIAs, the AMDs. Those are obviously very high margin, very high moats. It's not easy to get into that business. Or you can invest somewhere in the middle of the stack. So people like maybe the Bitcoin miners that are hosting these companies, the CoreWeaves, the NeoClouds that are making money off using the GPUs. So there's really a wide array of ways to get exposure to AI, but I really like kind of the higher up the stack, the chip makers, the NVIDIAs, the AMDs I'm excited about right now, the Bitcoin miners, and especially these hybrid Bitcoin miner AI plays.
Okay. Well, great. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave my listeners with, how they can find you on social media?
For sure. So on Twitter or X, it's McNally M is my handle. That's probably where I'm most active on social media. The YouTube channel itself is McNally Money, as you see right behind us. We also have a website, and powermininganalysis.com is where you'll find all the Bitcoin mining stuff. So I guess my final message would just be there's a lot going on in this space. I really do think Bitcoin is a generational shift in how the economy and money finance is going to work. I think AI is a generational shift in how people are going to interact with computers and artificial intelligence. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in this space. So if you're watching this, if you're looking for a new job, if you're looking for a new interest, a new stock, whatever the case is, I think this is a sector or spot you may want to take a look at.
Now, what is your highest conviction stock that you would like to share with people?
I don't do a lot of stock targets or picks, but specifically my top 3 holds right now. IREN on the NASDAQ, IREN. They're a hybrid Bitcoin miner that's also getting involved in the HPC AI space. They're anticipated to have a contract coming soon with the likes of a hyperscaler. CleanSpark, CLSK, pure play Bitcoin miner, large HODL. And then RIOT, Riot Platforms, another hybrid Bitcoin miner, big HODL, and involved in HPC.
All right. Well, thank you very much for doing this.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Look forward to seeing you again.